Coming up next, part 3 on To Kill a Mockingbird. Hey everybody, welcome to Kill a Mockingbird.
Is this like a new game?
I want to kill a mockingbird. Yeah, we haven't done that yet. I was wondering whether we would do that. Now we've done it. Mockingbird.
Am I supposed to do something now?
It's the Great Mockingbird song that I just made up. Somewhat derivative of the Village People, but I like to think I created it. I want to kill a mockingbird. Brendan is nodding. How would you describe Brendan's nod, Jake?
Sartorial.
Brandon has a sartorial nod. Yeah. Stabbed him right in the sartorial.
That's right. You got me.
The sartorial is bleeding. All right. I suppose I should introduce us.
Maybe.
Hopefully the new listeners are gone. And
do we still have listeners after that Dada episode?
Oh, yeah, that came out.
Absurdism.
I think Godot got what he deserved. or Beckett or whoever you want to say. That was a good episode. I like that episode. Which, fun fact, folks, no drink, no substance, no nothing on that episode. In case you were wondering, which my wife did. The answer is no. Actually, there wasn't.
Wow.
We wouldn't have been able to be that
lucidly,
metatextually lucid.
You're absolutely right, Jake. And I could have said it better myself. We would not have been able to be that metatextually lucid.
This episode, however.
We'll see.
We'll see. All right. I should really introduce us. There's Brandon. He's the scholar who's a baller of reading. There's Jake. He's the pastor who's a master of reading. Guys, let's say our classic catchphrase.
Which is...
I'll text it to... I'll text to both of you. You've both got your phones. So, we'll do 3, 2, 1, go. Few days go by where I don't imagine chili in Nietzsche's mustache.
That's great stuff.
Yeah, that's amazing.
It's true as well. A few days do go by.
Also, many more.
Is that also from Godot?
No, probably. It has to be. I can't imagine that we...
Where else would that come from? Nietzsche came up in that episode. I'm sure plenty.
Yes, you're right. Okay, folks, let me talk to you more about what's going on here. My name, I haven't even introduced myself. Jake, you want to introduce me?
That's Nathan. He's the host who's got the most or something like that.
Right? Yeah, he does.
Okay, guys, Mockingbird. Let's talk about... So we had 3 criticisms that we did not get a chance to cover last episode.
I forgot that's what we were doing.
We've got 2 more criticisms to talk about today.
Okay.
Criticism numero 2.
Should we remind people what the other criticism was?
Yeah, it was by our good friend Flannery O'Connor.
That's right.
She said...
Oh, that's what we're doing. Okay.
Quote, so we're talking about the...
I thought we had 3 criticisms.
This is a children's book.
We
I
like...
was trying to figure out what in the world.
We don't have any criticism. We love this book.
I would like to, speaking of children's books, because that was her criticism. This is a children's book, and people just didn't realize it was a children's book, and we made the smart comments that, well, like that's a real insult to call something a children's book, for one, and 2, she wants everything to be gritty, like, what's that guy's name?
It says a lot about what she thinks.
Yeah, it says more about her than it says about Harper Lee.
Right.
Is that a fair gist of what we said?
I think so, yeah.
But, so our friend Nathan, not Nathan, got us gifts for... Christmas.
Mm-hmm.
One of those gifts I used to purchase a book called Loudmouse, a children's book I didn't realize existed, but it's by Richard Wilbur, and I just got it the other day, so it's great. Thank you, Nathan, not Nathan. Speaking of children's books.
There you go.
Yeah.
Well, it must suck, since it's a children's book.
Yeah, it must.
Yeah,
Flannery O'Connor would never read it.
Yeah.
She wonders if I knew that's what I was buying.
You're probably
Flannery,
too stupid to know.
Joke's on you, I am too stupid to know.
Does Loudmouth get dragged into the woods and shot at the end?
Loudmouse.
Oh, Loudmouse.
Yeah,
Does Loudmouse get dragged into the woods and shot at the end?
He does, yeah.
By the misfit?
He does.
There you go.
Yep.
Sounds like a great children's book.
It's just a retelling of all of Flannery O'Connor's stories for children.
Sounds horrifying. But now with animals.
Yeah, right. The mouse has a wooden leg, and his brother ends up drowning. All this, it's really fun stuff.
See the misfit. See the misfit shoot. See the misfit shoot the boy.
Loudmouth tries to scream, but he cannot because he's dead.
He has a loud mouth and he must scream. I'll give $1 million to anybody that can get that reference. Okay.
It's this close.
If you out there were going to get it, then
Nathan owes you $1 million.
I guess I owe you $1 million. I won't be delivering on that. Now, the second criticism. Are we ready for it?
Really? You're not going to deliver on that?
No. I'm not going to be delivering on that.
Thanks for clarifying, Nathan. Warhorn legal team is very relieved right now.
Oh, they should be. Because, disclaimer, it was a lie. All right. So, in 1966, a couple years after the novel came out, a scholar named W.J. Stuckey.
Oh, that sounds like a scholar for you.
Never heard of him.
It sounds like a brand of peanut butter.
Famous books written by Lee Harper, 1. Famous books written by W.J. Stuckey, 0. All right, we dealt with that argument.
On to the next one.
No, okay. So, W.J. Stuckey.
Mm-hmm. Never heard of him.
Never heard of him. Impugned Lee. I am quoting from an article that I don't
What'd you say? Impugned Lee?
Impugned.
Oh, impugned. Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't understand you either.
Sorry. Impugned Lee for Mockingbird's mobilizing of the child's perspective in an adult's language, tagging it as a, quote, rhetorical trick. Whenever she gets into difficulties with one point of view, wrote Stuckey, she switches to the other. And I am quoting from not Stuckey, but from an article about Stuckey that I don't remember where that article
It's called Style, and if you don't like to watch somebody dance on a tightrope, then fine, this book's not for you, but don't criticize it.
We'll dance on your grave, W.J. Stuckey.
That's what we're going to do.
For being brilliant at what it is doing and how it's accomplishing it. For
you should have stuck to inventing the crustless peanut butter sandwich. That's what your name sounds like.
W.J. Stuckey. Yeah. Pretty good brand of peanut butter.
Yeah, I think so, right? I keep thinking, I must be hungry.
Well, it's got an S and an uck in it, so it's Smucker's, Stuckey, you know.
Oh, well, there we go.
Well,
David Copperfield,
mm-hmm.
Parts of War and Peace.
Uh-huh.
I mean, the list goes on of authors who have written from an adult perspective, but about a childhood perspective as well. And having that sort of mixture of perspectives is
Tolstoy tells things from the perspective of a horse.
It's called
or a dog.
It's called good third-person indirect narration.
Well, I don't know how much I'm going to be able to improve this argument, but let me try.
Look, the only way to improve the argument is to say it's a cheap trick. And that's all he's trying to do is to say it's a cheap trick. But what exactly is he trying to criticize? She uses a rhetorical device and achieves an effect consistently with that rhetorical device, and I don't understand why it's a cheap trick. I think it's actually very difficult to do.
I think it is certainly to do well, and I can certainly think of what is a good example of this done poorly. I can think of an example of it done extremely, and that would be A Christmas Story, which I love the narration in A Christmas Story, but the guy's always like, "Here's my snide adult way of expressing what kids do."
Okay, people, just fasten your safety belts.
Here comes...
Not in a bad way, but you can still see how the adult perspective and the child, it can have overtones that can be unfortunate.
Right.
Because that was our whole criticism of Milne. We all loved Milne. We all love Winnie the Pooh. We love it.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
But there were still those overtones that are a part of this guy snidely not really wanting to write children's stories. But you were going to...
Well, I'm just trying to think of... What's an example of it done... So you said Milne was a good example of it done poorly. Or
not done poorly, but still where you could see some of the effect that might be a little negative. I'm not crazy about A Christmas Story.
Yeah, well, that's why I brought it up, because people's mileage may vary. I think a lot of people love it, but it is such an extreme example of... The movie has one joke, and the joke is the guy's going to take a very silly kid thing, and he's going to cast it in the most dramatic adult language, and then you're going to enjoy the
contrast,
the ironic contrast between the two.
But one where it's done poorly, where the adult perspective through the eyes of a child.
I bet we can think of a movie that's bad that does this, but...
Just come out and say that you don't like it.
Me?
No. This.
Oh, Stucky.
Yeah.
Yes, Nathan. Come on.
He's dead, probably. Sorry, WJ Stucky, if you're listening and you're not dead.
All he's actually said is, this book uses a rhetorical device that is a stylistic decision that I want to criticize. And so I'm going to call it a rhetorical trick instead of a rhetorical device because I don't like it. And there's just really no...
I guess if you wanted to give a sympathetic spin to the argument, I'm going to keep trying here. Maybe he's saying she should have stuck with one. Like, in other words, write a novel from an adult's perspective talking about a kid, or simply inhabit a kid. But there is, I guess what he's saying is there's something manipulative or false or
cowardly,
unfair about jumping between the two. It means you don't actually have to deal with the serious ramifications of things where you don't want to, but then you can.
Cowardly.
Yeah, you can kind of just pick and choose. So
yeah. Oh, here's a place where I don't actually want to say something about race, and so I'm going to jump into.
Oh, Scout's too stupid to get it right now.
Yeah.
How cute. And then here's
so
a place
I can dance all around all this stuff without actually having to take. Anytime there's an inconvenient moral stand or perspective that needs to be taken, I can retreat into Scout's innocence. And so it's cowardly. But he doesn't call it cowardly.
No.
And it is, in fact, I don't think, cowardly.
But what does he want? Harper Lee to pause at every revelation and make it clear and like write an essay for us?
I think he wants her to do it one or the other, I think. He either wants it to be from the point of view of a child with the restrictions in thinking that a child would have, or
that's what
from the point of view of an adult thinking about a child.
I get frustrated with these sorts of criticisms because it's like what Jake was saying. All he's saying is that he didn't like the rhetorical trick.
Right.
He's not acknowledging the fact that...
The rhetorical device that he then just calls
He calls a trick. But even if it is a trick, all it is it's the way she chooses to tell the story. She has moments where she acknowledges this is an adult. I'm thinking back on the past, and now let's go back and inhabit and tell the story that I'm telling you, and have acknowledged that that's what I'm doing. So I really don't see the problem. I don't see...
Well, it's like any device, I think. Like the device of flashbacks in movies. They're dumb and hack until they're not. You know, like if you can pull it off, then it's great. Yeah, and if you can't, then it's terrible.
That's how they become bad usually, is otherwise it's novel. And this, to me, seems... And it's not something that people you can imagine can do easily well. And she does it well, and it tells the story, and it does the trick for her. So I really don't see what Stucky's problem is.
Well, yeah.
And so I get tired of certain types of critics that have their biases, and they have, this is the way things are done, right? This is the way that Western tradition has always done things, and this is not the way that epics tell their stories, and things like this. And you're like, well, okay, but you're acknowledging then that this author must be fairly self-aware about what they're doing. And that's part of art, is both working within tradition and also giving an interesting spin on it to keep it entertaining. And sometimes I don't even get the sense so that can be what artists do, but I don't even get the sense that's what Harper Lee's doing. She's just found a good way to tell her story.
Yeah.
She's not like doing it to be novel. She's not doing it to be ingenious. This is just the way, this is like a memoir, a fictionalized memoir.
I mean, you can say that given the time and the circumstances and everything else, she had to be very circumspect about her subject matter. I really think that the real case to be made is cowardice here.
Mm-hmm. The real case that Stucky could be made.
If you want to make a case against the rhetorical device that she uses and her style and her perspective, the case is cowardice. It is, you didn't have the moral courage to actually come out and say what the book is saying all over the place. You maintain plausible deniability by retreating into the perspective of an innocent child whenever it was convenient for you, or whenever it was inconvenient for you to take a stand. That's the case that you can make. And I think that that's an argument worth having, but I don't think that this book lasts. I don't think it has the impact that it has. I don't think that it sells. I don't think that it is a timeless masterpiece if she comes out and does what somebody who would make that argument would want her to do. And you can say that that was in part a failure of moral courage. And you might even in some respects be right. But at the end of the day,
her job wasn't to have moral courage. Her job was to write a great book.
And that's what she did.
Yeah.
And that's what she achieved. And
the book has scads of moral courage.
Yeah, I guess in those
It's one of the most moral books of the 20th. I mean, if you asked somebody, hey, what's the most moral book of the 20th century? I think 1 out of 10, or not 1 out of 10, 9 out of 10 people, this is one of the first, if not the first thing that they'll
come up with.
This is this is the moral touchstone of the entire 20th century in novel writing. Can you name another? I mean,
no.
I can't. To test this sort of theory, you'd have to find evidence. And so where would the places be that lack moral courage?
Well, we could pick on the Cunningham scene again. We're not going to show these guys for the racists that they are. We're going to have Scout pull a cute little thing and send the lynch mob packing. You could pick on the lack of, I don't necessarily agree with any of this, but let me just throw some things out there. You could pick on the lack of representation, #representation for Tom Robinson, for our main black character.
Calpurnia.
Okay.
In Calpurnia's church. Calpurnia's people and the pastor and the people that...
All of whom are only seen as deferential and Scouts limited, childlike.
Well, there is that one lady that asks her why she brought white children to the church.
Yeah, and is confrontational, and then she gets put in her place. And
I'm with you guys. I'm just trying to make the argument here.
No, yeah, I know what you're doing. And as far as the Cunningham scene goes, I mean, Harper Lee lived in a small town, and she knew that there was more nuance. So the liberals, they like to claim that there is no real good or evil. There's no bad or good. They're just people, right? Except in the case of white racists. And then suddenly they become the ultimate evil, the bad guy, the Sauron, right? And so all Harper Lee's acknowledging is that you can have people who would live normal, good lives still be racist.
She even goes so far as to actually make the point out loud.
Yeah.
Like to actually say, she has that whole scene where they're talking about how evil the Nazis are in the middle of all of this. You remember?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And it's a very sophisticated way of saying the Nazis were people too, guys.
Which isn't a popular sentiment these days. I think people actually want these bad guys to be dehumanized.
Mustache twirling, dehumanized.
The one character that kind of works by progressive standards is Tom Ewell, because he is just a horrible daughter molesting murderer of a jerk. But to have somebody like Mr. Cunningham be both sympathetic to Scout and to Atticus and a virulent racist that wants to lynch Tom Robinson.
Yeah. She has been saying, and then she goes so far as to explicitly say, how different, or at least pose the question, how different are we from the Nazis really?
Mm-hmm.
If we're willing to lynch Tom Robinson, if we're willing to put him on, to have a kangaroo court here and convict him of a crime we know he's not guilty of, how different are we from the Nazis?
By the way, guys, just a quick plot question. Was Tom Robinson murdered by the police?
No, I think Tom actually...
Suicided. But a very possible reading is they just took care of the problem.
Yes, that is a very possible reading.
That is a possible reading. I've never read it that way.
Me neither. It just struck me this time. But I'm sorry, Jake, I interrupted the point you were making, or maybe you.
I think I had finished it, or more or less finished it. All I said or was saying was that she really makes clear that she wants to ask the question, how far off are we from the Nazis really?
Right. Well, she has that whole extended section with the old lady who's so nasty, and then we're supposed to be like, oh, she's dying, and Atticus, our liberal do-gooder hero, really wants his children to understand that this woman, this nasty old woman,
had courage
and deserved their compassion
and respect. Yeah, she's a nasty, terrible person. She was in the middle of doing something courageous that made her that much more irritable. And Atticus wanted them to see the virtue in the nasty person. Harper Lee paints a southern town full of good people who are all willing to do terrible things.
But it's actually not a popular point these days, I think, among a certain sort of person. Like,
no, you just want to demonize the opposition, right?
Right.
You don't want to humanize the opposition.
People voted for Trump. They must be Nazis. Oh, people didn't vote for Trump. They must be the liberal socialist Illuminati that want to tear our country apart.
Yeah.
Well, let me go back to Stuckey one more time before we get too far away from him. I would make the case, I think, because I was very aware of the levels of irony in this book, and it's not something that as a teenager when I read this book I was really all that aware of at all, but the sophistication with which Harper Lee does her little tap dance is immense. I mean, she is operating on several levels at any given time and telling multiple stories and telling you things by not telling you things and making sly little jokes. And she does it with such masterful subtlety that you just never catch her doing it. You don't think about those rhetorical tricks. You don't think, oh, now we're switching to an adult's perspective. Doing such a good job with the dramatic trick of irony that you don't even think of this book as ironic. You
think of it as being sincere, but it's dripping with sarcasm and satire.
And double meanings. And
yeah, from the first page to the last.
Right. Mm-hmm. And you really don't think of it that way. So once you've said that, I will give Stuckey this. Yeah, I think there's places where she wants to avoid talking about things. I also think...
But he didn't actually...
Well, I'll give our characterization of Stuckey that. There's places where she wants to juke, where she wants to be like, oh, I just want to go there. If you're saying that that's bad, then okay, I guess I get that. But I also think it's her right not to. I mean, if your standard is this novel must be the most cutting piece of social realism, then I guess it fails that. But if your standard is this must be a masterful novel, then I don't think it fails that. Every author has to make choices about what they want to emphasize and what they don't want to talk about. And she had a landmine to navigate, and she does it so well that you don't even think of it as a landmine for the most part. You just think, oh, that was a nice little stroll.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, she is switching narrative voices. She is employing devices to avoid talking about things, and she's doing a terrific job, and she's to be commended for it. And it's a neat trick, and I just think so many authors would do it so much more poorly. The whole thing is you don't catch her doing it, you know? I mean, it's like when people say that book was manipulative. Every book is manipulative. Some books feel manipulative. That's the problem.
Mm-hmm.
And so, oh, that music made me feel like the scene in the movie was supposed to be sad. Well, every sad scene has music like that, but you just didn't like this music because it did a bad job and drew attention to itself. Harper Lee never draws attention to herself. She's doing all these things so subtly that, I mean, I almost want to say, even if she is being cowardly, she's getting away with it.
Yeah.
Like she earns the right by being so good at it.
There's a way that you could read this book, a simplistic way of reading this book, where you just don't see the subtlety of her craft, or the subtlety of her craft is so lost on you that you really do think with Flannery O'Connor that it's just a silly child's book. And then I can understand somebody being critical of the style, but that person has no business being a public critic of literature, because what a fool. What an illiterate fool.
Yep.
There you go, W.J. Stuckey.
There's a little rhetorical trick called insult. Served up nice and hot for you, Stuckey. Third criticism. This is my third and final criticism that I've seen leveled at this book in various forums, that it is essentially short-sighted in its view of history, in its view of small-town life, of race politics, that it is essentially a optimistic fairy tale of an America that both never existed and never came into being. The kind of benevolent, walk around in people's shoes liberalism of an Atticus Finch is in fact a lie and doesn't get you anywhere and hasn't gotten our nation anywhere and didn't work. I mean, we're treading into the territory of race politics here, which is not really where I mean for us to go. But I think we do have to, if ever there was a time for the Bookening to go a little bit there, maybe.
Maybe it's Sin to Kill a Mockingbird. Here's what I want to say to that. Let's grant that all of those things are true. Let's just grant them all. What's wrong with a little bit of aspirational writing? What's wrong with something to inspire us to be better and to rise above ourselves?
Because it allows us, if I can play devil's advocate, as white people to pat ourselves on the back, say, actually, we'd be Atticus Finch. Actually, we'd be the people that supported Atticus. We'd be the judge. It doesn't actually force us to reckon with anything. It actually just tells a nice fairy tale.
Isn't there a sense in which telling yourself, I'd be Atticus Finch, or even I'd want to be Atticus Finch, is in itself ennobling, helps you take when the time comes, take that step to be able to say, yeah, I remember saying I would be Atticus Finch. Here it is. I got to do that. I'm not actually ready in real life to grant all of those things. Mm-hmm. I just want to make the point. Let's just say worst case scenario, all those things are true. Is there no silver lining? Is there no beauty in having a story where we have a hero like Atticus Finch that we can aspire to be and imagine ourselves being? And let's go ahead and say, sure, we read the book. We failed to ask ourselves the question if we're the Nazis. We failed to ask ourselves the question.
And we're granting in this scenario that the book doesn't even actually make us reckon with those questions.
Yeah, the book doesn't actually ask us to think about, are we the Nazis today? Mm-hmm. The book doesn't ask us to think, are we the people, the woman living down the street? It doesn't ask us to think about each of those characters. It doesn't ask us to see ourselves in the lynch mob. Let's pretend like it doesn't do that. Even so, does it mean something for us to read a book where there's an Atticus Finch that we can aspire to be and say, yeah, he's right. That's what I wish I would do. And therefore, what I am now imagining myself doing in that scenario. And does that not, in some small way, improve me and help me be a better man? And if we can answer yes to that, then who cares about the rest of it? Because that critic's wrong about the rest of it too, or most of it.
Well, we'll get there in a second, but what I want to tag on and say is, it did. Like, what historical snobbishness? Like, okay, maybe even you want to grant that Jake Menzel and Nathan Alberson and Brandon Chastain don't need Atticus Finch, that we're in a different time and place, but Atticus Finch did inspire a generation of white people that really wanted to do better. And
Atticus Finch, no question, inspired my dad.
Precisely.
He inspired my dad to be a better man and to try to raise me to live in a way that doesn't see color. There's no question in my mind that is a direct downstream from Harper Lee thing. 1-to-1. Atticus Finch, my dad, to me. Mm-hmm. And
maybe Gregory Peck in the middle there.
And maybe only Gregory Peck, but who cares? And my dad failed in all kinds of ways, and there were things that we didn't know or see or understand about race, even with, my black friends growing up, that I just didn't get. It's hard to actually walk around in somebody else's shoes. Mm-hmm. It's a lot harder than it looks. It's a lot harder than you imagine it to be. And maybe there were all kinds of dumb ways where we patted ourselves on the back and said that we had done that when we had it. But we wanted to, and we thought it was the right thing to do. And Atticus Finch, the character created by Harper Lee, is in fact, in many ways, directly responsible for the desire to do that. The desire to imagine ourselves having all of that stuff. And you can't say that is intrinsically negative. What's
negative about it?
Yeah, what's negative about a hero that you can aspire to like that?
Critics like that would say, well, that's just oversimplifying things and
letting people off the hook. And what they need to be told is, shut up, check your privilege. You're not capable of.
But that's not what modern pop art tells you. That's modern pop art tells you Tom Ewell is such a monster that he just deserves to be put down. like a dog, like the rabid dog that Atticus shoots, and that's it. End of the story. And then we all get to pat ourselves on the back because we're not a horrible racist monster like Tom Ewell.
We either stay inside and shut the door, or we go stand in the street with a gun and shoot the Tom Ewells of the world. But that's all that there is. That's all that's left to us.
Right.
Not trying to live in any kind of real responsible way, loving our neighbor. But as a white male, I have two options. One's to stay inside my house, and the other is to go hunt down the Tom Ewells of the world.
Mm-hmm.
But that's it, because I don't have the right to try to live and navigate through this, my way through this world, as a man who just wants to be an upright, righteous, God-fearing man who honors all people.
Well, the thing about Harper Lee is she hasn't read any books on critical race theory. She doesn't understand that white privilege is intrinsically bad. And so Atticus, as a character, does have white privilege, and he is paternalistic in the way that he helps people. And I think the modern sensibility finds that offensive.
How condescending of Harper Lee to write a book about
that guy and about that guy's daughter. Like, what about Calpurnia? She's the character. Or Tom, he's the character.
That's what I've been thinking, is that their response would be to write it from Tom's perspective. Right.
And my response is sure, but that doesn't mean this isn't a good book too.
Yeah. And so they would say, aren't you just, you're just sugarcoating things. You're making it too easy. You're giving us the easy way out, the easy perspective, the one that lets us live in a fantasy parable. But that's not the point of art. The point of art is to show us what's real and to make us change by seeing what we don't want to look at, those sorts of things. What's hard to look at, what wouldn't get looked at otherwise. I mean, that's the typical response from the multicultural perspective.
There's some hard to look at things in this book, guys.
Yeah.
Sorry to say.
I mean, and it certainly doesn't make the white privilege of somebody like Tom Ewell look like a very enviable or happy.
Is it Bob Ewell?
Bob Ewell? Is it Bob Ewell? I keep wanting to say
it's Tom Robinson.
Tom Robinson, sorry. Yeah, Bob Ewell. I don't know. I mean, we don't have to turn this into a podcast on critical race theory, but the fact is, the Atticuses of that period did have privilege, and the fact that Atticus uses it, you can be mad that they had the privilege, but here's an idea. They were going to. The fact that Atticus uses it well isn't something that we should sneer at.
What else is he supposed to do?
What's he supposed to do? Well, what he's supposed to do is give it up somehow, and who knows
and then what happened?
How that works.
Yeah, and where this criticism crosses with Flannery O'Connor's is that I'm sure these people are thinking that just turns this into a moral parable.
Mm-hmm.
That's all this story is. And who needs that sort of thing? That's just too easy, because all that does is it's like moral catharsis, but it doesn't ask you to change anything by showing you what's difficult, like The Wire.
Right.
Right. I don't know what they would appeal
If only To Kill a Mockingbird could be The Wire.
Yeah, I don't know what they would look at
like a bird on a wire.
Yeah, as an alternative.
The HBO should really make To Kill a Mockingbird. We just need more nudity and sexual torture.
Yeah, and so
cocaine.
Atticus is just too easy. He's too unrealistic. He's too white.
Mm-hmm.
Tom Robinson, it should have just been about him. It should have been for him.
Well, Brandon, doesn't it dehumanize Tom Robinson actually, just in a metatextual way, that we don't actually get anything from his point of view, that we just see him as this victim, this thing, the symbol?
Dehumanize him?
Yeah, isn't the...
How so?
I'm not saying that the characters dehumanize him. I'm saying that the text dehumanizes him by not giving him a voice.
Because why would the 9-year-old girl go spend time with Tom Robinson?
Well, then don't write it from her perspective.
I guess I don't like lazy definitions, so I still don't understand how the text is dehumanizing him.
Because it's not making him a human. He's a symbol. He's a victim. He's a thing in the story. He's a plot point. He's not allowed any dimensionality. He's not allowed any character trait that isn't directly
Well, I think that's
involved
actually
with
part of the
becoming of Atticus and of Finch.
No, it's actually it's part of the effectiveness of this story that we only get to see what they would have seen of Tom, and yet it still works to make us realize the horror that's happening, right? Does that make sense? We only see Tom through other people,
mm-hmm.
which is interesting.
Except
we see him through his wife. Yeah, except when he takes a stand, but we see him through the way that the white community looks at him, the way that the black community looks at him, the way his wife looks at him. But we don't ever really get to know Tom, which is an interesting point. But I think it's more, I don't think it dehumanizes him at all.
Here's the thing. Harper Lee wasn't above having Jem and Scout and Pillsbury, what's his name?
Yeah.
Dill.
Go anywhere, do anything that the plot requires. She's very clever in the way that she covers her tracks, but basically they're just always where they need to be. They could have gone into that jail and had a little conversation with old Tom. She could have given Tom some humanity, actually, made him into more than a symbol. It wouldn't have been hard to contrive some moments of dimensionality to give Tom what Twain gave Jim.
Yeah, I don't know if this story needed that, though, because it's really interesting the way it works is that she manages to do a lot of humanizing by the fact that we never get to see this poor man except through his relations and through what he's being accused of that we know is so wrong. We don't have to see anything else about him. And yet it does feel like it feels like a full picture. I hadn't thought of it that way before. But yeah, she doesn't feel like she has to give us a full portrait of Tom Robinson for him to still have. Well, I guess she has enough dignity to realize that we don't necessarily have to know all of someone's story to realize the injustice being done to them. That's part of it, is that someone would demand that we have to humanize someone in that way to ever think of them as having an injustice perpetrated against them. That's pretty dehumanizing. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
that does. And you actually do get a lot of who Tom is just through, like the fact that he would always stop and help the, what's her face, the woman that accuses him of the daughter. That both shows he was foolish and that he was a kind, compassionate guy. You actually learn all kinds of things about who Tom was.
And in the end, this is not a book that is questioning whether or not we should value the black community. This book is assuming we should, and that the book is more a question of how do we deal with that as a white community and stop. And so that's where the perspective it's going to deal more with. And it's not humanizing the white community to have the story be about them, just like it's not oversimplifying the black community to not have the story be about them.
But just in the context to 2 episodes ago, Brandon, you used the context section as an excuse to talk about the Harlem Renaissance and all your favorite authors and say people actually should read wider than a boring old white man's definition of the Western canon.
Yeah.
Like we actually do need more black voices.
We do.
So that doesn't mean you eradicate To Kill a Mockingbird because it doesn't happen to represent that point of view. It just means more people should write more books.
What it means is that you should understand what the book is doing in front of you and not wish that it would do more. And so you don't get mad at Tolstoy because he didn't write about the American Revolution that was also taking place in the War of 1812. And so you deal with the book that you have because that book is about the upper class of Russia. You deal with the book you have here. This is about a small town community and the way that it disregards certain people. And once you realize that's what it's about, you realize it's not dehumanizing Boo Radley or Tom Robinson to not have them be in the limelight. All it's doing is...
Boo Radley, I hadn't even thought of in relation... if you want to talk about a character who's just a symbol or a archetype or who isn't really fleshed out in, there's a white character that's much more of that than Tom.
Yeah.
By the way.
And this is just an inevitability of any story. There are always going to be ancillary characters that have to make brief appearances in a story for particular reasons. And like it or not, that's just the way that life works too. I mean, do these same people, every person they meet, do they then do a deep Facebook dive on them to make sure they really understand who they are? I mean, that's sort of absurd to even expect that. We don't expect it of life and we can't expect it of art.
Well, and by the way, insofar as within the confines of the story she's telling, Harper Lee can give us better representation. She's going to give us Calpurnia. She's going to give us the trip to the black church. She's going to give us the pastor. She's going to have them up in the rafters with the black community when Tom gets sentenced.
Yeah. I mean, Huckleberry Finn had already done it, right? Jem is the great character that sort of was the deep dive that they would want. And this book assumes it can assume human dignity for characters that aren't primary or even secondary characters. I mean, Tom makes such a brief appearance, and yet everything revolves around him. This book would be way too much if that's what it tried to do, and that's not what it's trying to do. what's fascinating about this book is it seems to be just a small town story for the first few chapters. And then suddenly it becomes this, and you realize how if these sort of horrors could just be on the outskirts, while everything seems like it should just be normal, it should just be like a Steven Spielberg small town movie. But then suddenly you have the interruption of the monster that enters in later. I don't see that as being a problem. It's actually pretty effective. To summarize what I've been saying, you should criticize the book
that she wrote.
That she wrote, not the book that you wish that she had written. And so, like I was saying in context, there's a whole world of books that do exactly what apparently these sorts of critics want. You can go and you can read Native Son. You can go and you can read Invisible Man. Those are from the perspective of a black man. They're brilliant. They're great books. They do the work you're wanting them to do, but that's not what Harper Lee's writing. She's writing about the white people that are oblivious to that until it interrupts their community. Mm-hmm. And then she's writing about all the disturbances that happen because of that. So actually, in that way, it's brilliant, and let it do the work that it's trying to do.
Well, and by the way, maybe this is so obvious that it doesn't even bear saying, but Harper Lee couldn't have written anything else. She's writing her life. She's writing what she grew up with. These are her memories. You know, I mean, her dad was a lawyer who did defend people like Tom Robinson on occasion. She didn't have the materials to write the Tom Robinson story, and how could she? She's not Tom Robinson.
Well, it's funny. If she had tried to write that book, all you would have is people saying, this is just a white woman trying to write from the perspective of a black man.
Yeah.
Yeah, what does she know?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't. Well, I'll tell you who I like. Our donors.
I thought that might be where you were headed, Nathan.
I didn't. I had no idea where this was going.
Oh, man. It's because I switched rhetorical devices on you, Jake.
Tricks, you mean?
Yeah, rhetorical tricks. I'm sorry.
Trixie host.
Trixie Alberson.
Yep.
Trixie.
Fun fact. Sometimes we offer Brandon some bread, and he won't. He refuses. He goes and catches his own fish and devours them.
Mumbles to himself. Nasty.
Nasty hobbits. Nasty warhorn media people.
All right. Brandon, what kind of exciting thing are we going to do to announce our patrons? Which, by the way, if you want to become a patron, you go to patreon.com/thebookening. You can give any amount per month. But if you give at least $10, we will shout you out like we're about to do for these fine people. And we're also going to do something cute and fun like we always do, and Brandon's going to call it.
Am I?
Yeah.
Oh, man. We're gonna just say their names.
Nope. That's not how it works, Brandon.
That's not how it works. We're just going to say their names really sweetly.
Oh, okay. That works. We can do that. Robert and Rhonda the Lovebirds, Brandon.
Robert and Rhonda the Lovebirds.
The Artful Anthony Dodger, Jake.
The Artful Anthony Dodger.
That was very sweet.
That was sweet. The Artful Anthony Dodger must be blushing.
Here.
Little Anthony Cigar Store.
Little Anthony Cigar Store.
Did we say sweet or
sultry?
Sultry.
Little Anthony Cigar Store.
Is that your version of sultry?
I don't know.
Because, man.
Poor Anna.
Yeah,
poor Anna.
Poor Anna.
Hey, Anna. Come here, baby. I'm using my sultry voice. Aren't I sexy right now, Anna?
Oh, Nathan.
I'm going to try this on Meredith when I go home. Hey, Meredith. You want to kiss me?
Whoa, she's right outside the door.
Oh, wow. She's breaking through the glass. She's so attracted to me right now.
Sugar.
Water, and water. Where were we? The Immortal Chelsea E. Did we say her yet?
The Immortal Chelsea E.
Jimmy and Little Annie Oakley.
Little Beam and Jimmy Annie Oakley.
Little Beam and Jimmy Annie Oakley. I love it. Lily of the Valley.
Lily of the Valley.
International Lovebirds. The Keith Master.
The Keith Master.
David's Mighty Men Trucking. Jane, June, Little Baby Max.
Jay and Ju and Little Baby Max.
Sorry.
Whoa.
I missed up some couple there. John and Katie, who are Golden Love Cheese, and also C.S. Lewis, including Till We Have Faces.
Katie, you're Golden Love Cheese, and also C.S. Lewis.
So it's Jay and John and Katie and Jay and
Katie.
And
Sorry. Obviously, folks, it's John and Jill, Little Baby Max, and Jay and Katie, who are called Love Cheese, and also C.S. Lewis. Fairy Princess of Wonder and Happiness, Mother Beth.
Fairy Princess of Wonder and Happiness, Mother Beth.
Consul Prime Adam. Jeremy, the Dark-Hooded Lord of Death.
Jeremy, the Dark-Hooded Lord of Death.
Nathan, not me.
Nathan, not Nathan.
Ryan, the Red Avenger, and Judith of the Ladies of Justice.
Ryan, the Red Avenger, and Judith of the Ladies of Justice.
Danny, the Dude.
This is all very sweet, guys.
This is sweet. I'm glad we're fulfilling the stipulations. DJ Sammy G, Danny Tiberius, Eric and Catherine. Come on, guys. Breaks, Professor and Lady X. Lavender's green, Dylan, Lavender's blue. Lavender's green, Dylan, I love you too. Noah Constrictor.
No, it's
Marriage Sheep, the Baron for Maiden Chloe. Anthony, who's cold and hates life, liberty, and the pursuit
Anthony,
of
who's cold and hates life, liberty, and the pursuit
of that cheese.
Jiu-Jitsu Jeffrey, the Texas Ranger.
Jiu-Jitsu Jeffrey, the Texas Ranger.
Rachel. Leopard Tank Thomas.
Leopard
Thomas.
Midnight Ninja Ellen.
Midnight Ninja
Ellen.
What was that?
I don't know, man. I'm riffing over here.
What is it? Okay, Queen Kangetta.
Queen Kangetta.
Return of the Jedi.
Return of the Jedi.
Hey, Lance Redford joined us. Wow. Jay of Rack and Ruin.
Jay of Rack and Ruin.
And Timothy.
Dang it all.
And Brandon Chastain from the Ville. Wow.
Hey, guys.
Jay of Rack and Ruin.
Jay of Rack and Ruin.
Timothy the Rider at Dawn.
Timothy the Rider at Dawn.
Eric and Kate, the Camp Champ Kings. Warming the bees.
Do they love those bees? Let me count the ways.
I hate bees.
Maddie. Yeah, Matt Lance is a battler. Madman. Relationship with bees. Sweet Jamie Sunshine.
Sweet Jamie Sunshine.
Taylor the Keeper. Sorry, Taylor. Not Taylor. I'm so sorry, Tyler. I meant Tyler. Tyler, the Keeper of Eternal Darkness, and Laura, the Keeper of Eternal Light.
Tyler, the Keeper of Eternal Darkness, and Laura, the Keeper of Eternal Light.
Cold Steel Cody.
What?
Cold Steel Cody, I think it was.
And Jacqueline, the Librarian Barbarian.
Jacqueline, the Librarian Barbarian.
I'm glad you speak his language, Jake.
Many long years forged in the trenches. John Bobadillo, Bomb Diggity.
Oh, Lance.
And Captain Tennille, his mate.
Captain Tennille and his mate.
And of course, Saxophone Alex.
Saxophone Alex.
Saxophone Alex, huh? You got a jetpack. You don't deliver the jetpacks, do you, Saxophone Alex? Because
we'll find out. Anyway.
At the price of $25 at Sound of Sanity, you can be distributed in jetpacks. Saxophone
yeah, man.
Alex.
Sound of Sanity. No, sorry, folks. Wrong podcast. Lance really threw me off there.
That'd be my bad, Mr. Stone Huntington.
Mr. Stone Huntington's not here. Nathan is here. He's a completely different person than Stone Huntington is. Little bit of a jerk, you know. Guys,
Nathan is
the book. Who?
Nathan? No. Hey, it's an owl. Owl Moon. That's a good book. Anyways.
Sorry, folks. That was a bad ending to the podcast. But I'm going to leave it in. Patreon.com/the Bookening.